Hello and welcome to another episode of the Most of Spotlight podcast. Today I'm joined by Sophie, as John is engaged on other things. And today our special guest is Cathrine Wilhelmsen. There we go, got it right. I'll take that. I'm terrible with names on this podcast. But Cathrine, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all right. As I this podcast now is 57 episodes in total. So it's we've spoken to so many different people in that time. So it's always nice to have a new face on and obviously hear about their stories as well. So
yeah.
So Cathrine, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about what you do, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm Cathrine, or if you want to try the Norwegian pronunciation, it's Cathrine Wilhelmsen. I'm sure that would be harder for you. So
I am not going to try that whatsoever. I will stick with Cathrine. Thank you very much.
Let's stick to Cathrine.
That sounds lovely, though. That sounds really nice.
So I am from Norway. I currently work in a Norwegian company called Evidi as a solutions architect, but I'm also doing a little bit of hands-on data engineering, data architecture stuff. On my free time, I absolutely love to blog and talk about topics, and I've kind of specialized in the data integration space in Microsoft and Azure. So specifically, Azure Data Factory, Azure Synapse Analytics are my two go-to topics. And because of that, I've been a Microsoft Data Platform MVP since 2015.
Wow.
That was the very short version. Thank you.
Well done. So tell us a little bit about your journey then. How have you become and how did you get to becoming a solutions architect?
So my journey has been a little back and forth. I stumbled into the data world by accident, as many others, I'm sure. So I was actually, I studied programming. I originally wanted to study graphic design. Then I switched over to programming because I tried that and figured out, this is cool, this is fun. And then I ended up accidentally in a data warehousing project when I started working. So at that point, I was like, oh, this sounds cool. Yeah, great. I'm in, let's do this. And I went back home and I Googled what is a data warehouse. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I quickly realized that I loved it. It gave me an opportunity to work on, my entire skill set and my entire set of interests as well, from, the programming and coding side of things all the way up to kind of graphic design with reports, data visualizations, and things like that. Plus, I realized very quickly that working with data works with my mind. I've always been very organized. I like to, sort things and group things in my closet or, wherever. So it kind of worked for me to work with data. And then I got to work with all of the things. And then I've just kind of progressed from being, a junior developer and through senior developer, and then moving into architecture, which is, one level above being kind of hands-on. But I do still love working hands-on. I do like coding. I do like solving technical challenges. So I still have to add, a little part of that. But yeah, now more on the entire data platform architecture, and I work as a consultant, so guiding our clients into figuring out what they need, what are the right products to use, and just having those conversations, which is fun.
So that's the one thing about being an architect I miss is the hands-on engagement, because I used to love writing PowerShell scripts, making sure it all works, executing, but yeah, don't get to do that as much as I used to.
No, I tell my employer that I need to do a little bit of that, just to continue being hands-on, because that's the fun part for me.
It's the fun part, and it's also the educational part as well, because we can go and read this stuff, but it's always cool to actually sit there and play with it and do a little bit more than just oh yes, X does this and Y does that. I want to know how it all links together. Can I break it? Can I do it and more stuff? So yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
you got to have that slight hands-on thing to to keep your brain ticking over as well.
Yeah. And it's nice to do part of it in my job. I still have, a couple of side projects like hobbies, like my blog and website development, which is just kind of fun stuff. But it's nice to do it as part of my job as well.
Yeah, so I have a few things just to help, I mean, obviously, this is one of my hobbies, but I say outside of that, I run a football team. I'm doing some of the M365 stuff, trying to drag them into the future because they're a charity, so why not? So things like that is just it is helpful for yourself as a person learning, and I say every day is a school day in my book. So we have to keep going out there, keep driving to do more, and that's the way we always improve.
I think it keeps you interested though as well, doesn't it? If you can put some element of being hands-on and doing things that you enjoy during your working day, I feel like it adds a little bit of something extra.
Absolutely. And I also feel like being an architect and being in meetings with clients, it offers kind of that I've done this. I know how this works. I'm not just, drawing boxes and arrows. I've actually developed this solution myself. So I know where the pain points are. I know what's probably not working as well as I wanted to, but I know how to work around it. And I feel like that is maybe even a little bit more important for me as a woman coming in with, I have hands-on experience. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that helps.
Going back to your interest within data, and that's really where it sort of stemmed from. For me, data is kind of new, and being in these roles and having the opportunity to really dive into data and be quite successful and become a data specialist and things like that. I've recently had a friend who's just got into it, who's just started getting into it, and she absolutely loves it. We were talking about this the other day, in that you don't really hear about it much or know actually what's involved and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, what sort of piqued your interest when you first started getting into data, and when did you then know, yes, this is something that I'm really interested in?
Yeah, so I think you can kind of come into the world of data from two sides, either a little bit more from the business side or the user side, or from the technical side. And obviously, I came in from the technical side, so it was very much database development work, moving data around, integrating data, making sure that everything is usable and connected from different sources, and presenting that in an optimal way to the business users. So I came in from like the coding side, and I really enjoyed basically just writing SQL queries and figuring out, like, how do I get the data set that I want? How do I filter it? How do I make sure that everything is easy to kind of understand and use? Try and get the right numbers. It was kind of like a little puzzle every time you work with it. Like, is this correct? Did I get the right data set out of all my different sources? So for me, I think that was just a fun part of it. And then also, like in the old Microsoft business intelligence stack that I started working on, it was very much on the data integration side. So moving data, you had to learn how to work with different types of sources, different types of source systems, and it was all just like a big puzzle for me. And I really enjoyed that, finding the bits and pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle, and putting them together until you had like the complete picture at the end. So I enjoyed that part. But I think a lot of other people are coming in, and especially now from the Power BI side, from actually grabbing data that they know from the domain that they're working in, and figuring out how do we visualize this? How can we get the insights from that? And having follow the Power BI journey, seeing how that product has evolved to being so available to so many more users, that people are becoming more aware of what is data. Because in the past, it was more like it was just something that you had somewhere. Yeah. But now it's so accessible with, you can pull it out, you can see graphs and charts, and you can plot it on maps, and it's super interactive, and it's fun, and it looks nice. And I think that's getting more and more people into, the world of data. More than it's just something that you're storing somewhere to support an app or a website. So yeah, two different perspectives. I came very much from the technical side, but it's fun to see more people coming into it, and then kind of gradually moving down the stack and figuring out, like, okay, I know how to make this chart, but how do I make it run faster, or how do I do more? And then they're slowly starting to trickle down into where I am. And then we're kind of meeting up in the middle and having that kind of team as well, I think is really great for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's definitely helped me as well. Like, so I'm an account director for an IT distributor, and just working with partners and them and having that data available, our team's amazing, and it's just helped me massively with conversations and moving things forward and all that sort of stuff. So I'm all for it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm not technical in the slightest. I don't know how they'd get it, but it's definitely helpful for the whole business, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so easy. Like you just say, okay, I know I have this kind of system. I need to grab some data from here or an Excel file or whatever. And, immediately you can start working with it visually and you can see that the results that you want to present, yeah, this looks good. I know these numbers. I know this data. This looks right. Click a button, see things move around on the screen. It's, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, amazing. And how was it for you going through school and college and university or whatever you did as a woman and being technical and wanting to do the programming side of things? What sort of experience was that for you?
So I've always been a geek. Like I can remember I was 6 or 7 years old, and during like summer vacation between first and second grade, we had a little notebook where it said like write down what you did during the summer. And I was like, I learned how to type the alphabet on our computer as fast as possible. So I mean,
Love
I've
that.
always been interested in computers and IT. I started learning HTML and CSS to build my own websites when I was 10. Because at that point I got frustrated with, the old front page and the code was messy, and I was like, I can probably figure this out.
Andrew,
You're muted, by the way.
I was going to say Microsoft Front Page was absolutely brilliant. I love that. Such a great tool that I used to use back in the day.
Yeah, I loved it. It was how I got started, but then I looked at the code and I was like, this doesn't really make sense. Yeah. So that's where I was like, I can probably do better here. So I've always been interested in it, and it made things easier for me because I knew that I always wanted to do something within IT. I just wasn't sure what, because there were so many things that I enjoyed. So for high school, we have kind of 3 years specializing in media communication, where I basically got to have 3 years of just having fun at school. We were working on a Mac. We learned how to use, Photoshop and Illustrator. We did television, radio, graphic design, all the cool things. So I really got to, try different things there. And that's where I thought, okay, graphic design, this is fun. This is cool. Let's go into that. And then I started on what was called interactive design in university, which is basically UX. I think they've rebranded it to that. I'm old, so I think it's UX now. But that was the year that we started learning programming. And then I realized that this is fun. This is cool. So up until that point, I think we had like fairly balanced, 50-50 boys and girls. But when I switched over to programming, I was one of 3 out of 40, 50 something.
Yeah.
I think.
Wow.
So that was like the first time I realized that, okay, this is, I went from graphic design, which is for many people considered a little bit more girly, into programming, which was very not girly at all. So that was like the first time I really noticed that, oh, this is a very, male dominated environment. But I enjoyed it. I loved it. I had no issues in school. People, they knew that I was there for the same reason. Like, we're interested in the same things. We're enjoying the same things. We can work together. So it wasn't really a problem for me. And then when I started working, I kind of went back to, I think it was still fairly male dominated, but we still had more women because I came into the business intelligence side of things and not like the hardcore development or infrastructure side of things.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've never really had that many challenges personally in my workspace. I've had just a few episodes here and there. So I consider myself fairly privileged that I've had people around me who have supported me throughout my career. I think the only thing was when I was interviewing for jobs after university, I applied for something called Microsoft University here in Norway, which is basically you get hired by a company and then they pay for like a 6-week intensive Microsoft coursing thing.
Okay.
And you send in one application through Microsoft, and then they connect you with all of these different companies who are interested in hiring you out of school. So we did a round of speed dating back then. So I had like 10 minutes with each employer just to like kind of figure out who are you? Is this, a right match? Do we want to continue the interview process? And that day was really great. I talked to a lot of companies. And then I got to one company where there were three men in suits who sat, on the table. And I walk up and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Catherine." And they were just staring at me a little bit. And they're like, "So how do you think that you're going to be able to cope in, such a male-dominated industry?" And I said the same things that I said now. I'm used to this. It's fine. We're all interested in the same things. They're like, "Yeah." And asked a few more questions. And after 5 minutes, they were like, "Yeah, I don't think we have any more questions. So I think you can, just kind of head out."
Mm.
I was like, that was half the time of 10 minutes, which is still like super lightning fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I got up and I had to walk through this like entire big space where everyone was sitting at different tables and just kind of slide out of the room trying not to disturb the others, and that was super awkward. So I think back then it was like, ooh, okay, let's just not make a fuss. I think if anyone had done that today, I would have told them that, this is not cool. Don't
Yeah.
do this to me or anyone else. Not a cool thing. But I think that's really one of the very few stories I have. Otherwise, I haven't really felt personally that many challenges as a woman. I think I've found great coworkers as well who has been part of giving me that great experience.
I think that's one of the main things, especially what we found speaking to different women who have had loads of different experiences. But if you have that support, growing up and within your workplaces, whether they're male or female, I think it makes a massive difference to your experience.
Yeah, sure. And it's also fun because when I started working, I was so shy. I could barely talk to people, social anxiety. I was socially awkward. I was very good with computers, which is why I wanted to work with computers and not people. But even then, I had like a manager who believed in me and he supported me and he encouraged me to, kind of start stepping out of that comfort zone bit by bit. And he was a really great manager. And then he left the company, went somewhere else. We had, careers going in different directions. But then we met up, I think it was 8 years later, I think,
Yeah.
after I had become a Microsoft MVP, after I started speaking and actually being on stage. That was like a huge transformation for me. And then we met back up and I walked over to him and I was like, "Thank you for, believing in me and helping me start this journey of, continuously try and, challenge myself. Look at, this is where I am today." And a lot of that is coming from my first ever manager believing in me and supporting me. And he was like, well, he basically started crying. He was like, "I always knew you had it in you. That was why I hired you. And it's, it's been a pleasure watching you throughout your journey, like from the sideline." But it was really nice to meet him again and be able to say, thank you for having my back and cheering me on. It made such a huge difference for me.
Yeah, but it sounds, well, it's great. It's an amazing story and an experience for yourself.
Yeah.
So how did you say you're doing these speakings, you're a speaker now, you do blogs, you're an MVP. That transition, you said it was, big for yourself. How did you get into that? How did you push yourself to do that?
Yeah, so that was a complete 360 in my life when that happened. And the story here is back in 2013, my employer wanted to send me to a technical conference. It's called Pass Summit. It was in Charlotte, I think, North Carolina, back then. And I was like, yes, I want to go. It's a big conference. It's a week. I've never been to the US. Let's go. Let's do this. So I traveled over there. By myself. I had another coworker there as well, but we were traveling separately. I went there And on basically the first day, I met someone who was like, "Oh, you're new." I was like, "Oh, yeah. I'm here alone. First time, never been to, conference like this or here." And they were like, "Oh, awesome. Come and join us. Come join us for dinner. Come and join us, have a drink in the evening." And I was basically almost dragged around, almost literally dragged around the entire night, meeting all of these new people. They were super friendly, super welcoming. I got all their business cards, and I went back to my room that night and I looked through the business cards and I was like, "Oh my goodness, like these are all the speakers at this event. I recognize their names from the schedule and the sessions that I had planned, and these are authors. I have their books back home." And I was basically just mind blown. Like, how did I meet all of these celebrities, right? And it was such a strange experience because they were, heroes. They were famous. I had read their blogs and books and attended sessions and watched, video trainings. And here I was actually talking to them. It was, it was very mind blowing at that time. But then it just kind of continued throughout that week. People were welcoming me, they were encouraging me to join them. I learned about the entire data community, which, we're calling it SQL Family. I was like, that is totally a marketing gimmick. Like, this is not a real thing. But then I realized that, it is actually a real thing because these are super supportive people who want to continue building up this community, and they are actually welcoming. It's not just something they say, they are doing it. So in that 1 week, I learned about, all the different things, conferences and user groups and all of these different opportunities. And in that week, I got so inspired and motivated that I said, I'm going to go home and do something like this for my community back home in Norway. And I got introduced to another Norwegian woman. We kind of restarted the user group that had been dormant for a few years, got that up and running, organized a local conference, like a one-day free conference thing. And if I had known what I was getting myself into, I'm not sure I would have done it. But I was like young and naive, and I was like, yeah, young and naive, and I was like, okay, let's just go and do this. So much work, but totally worth it. So I came in from kind of building up that community side, and then after that, I was like, maybe I can deliver a session as well. So I did that, and enjoyed it. And then since then, I've kind of continued in the community, just keep speaking, keep volunteering, organizing, and it was so great to kind of finally feel like I found my people. I really felt like I found my crowd and my people. And then from there, my life just turned upside down. From barely talking to people to finding my people where we shared interests. I could talk to them about things and be excited about things and not feel like the awkward one for, having interests outside of what was common for young women. And since then, it's just kind of keep going. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. I'm so grateful for the people who were part of that.
So running a community is a lot of hard work. I mean, Pete Rising put a post up just the other day about how you become a Microsoft MVP. And my comment was a lot of hard work, because you've got to give up so much of your personal time just basically looking at things that you want to blog about or present about. Then obviously if you're running an event, it's then finding a venue, finding a way of actually paying for that venue, any kind of like sponsorship for like covering just like drinks or food. It is so much hard work becoming an MVP. Everyone thinks, oh yeah, it's easy to do this. No, you got to put a lot of yourself into it. I mean, I did it for 3 years. That's why I've got them plaques behind me, and it is draining. It is physically and mentally draining at times, because if you want to keep pushing and keep becoming more well known, then you've got to do a lot of work.
Yeah, you do. And I think for me, it was something I needed. It was very much a part of my own like personal growth and personal journey as well. Growing up, kind of. But it was more like the motivation wasn't to be an MVP. It was to pay it forward, the experience that I had, and to give back to the community. And I feel like it's given me so much. I think now I'm kind of starting to slow down a bit, and I can pass the torch to, we have a few Norwegian women in their mid-20s who, like, I recognize myself. I can see like the excitement, the motivation, and the energy, and they want to do all the things. And it feels good for me to know that I showed a few people that you can actually do this. I can pass on the torch and kind of lift them up and help them on their journey as well, rather than me having to do everything myself, because I've done so much already that I'm so happy that I got to be a part of. So yeah, like, pass on the torch to the young, energetic women, and kind of lift them up, and see how their journey is going to be, which I'm looking forward to. But it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Not everyone has the time or the money or the energy or the capacity to do all of that. So I know I've been super privileged. But yeah, for me, it was very much worth it, because it helped me so much personally as well, and not just my career.
Yeah, as I say, it very much depends on where you are in life as well. Because, I say, a lot of you at that particular time when I was becoming an MVP, doing all that stuff, my life was completely different. I was like traveling around, doing my job, staying away in hotels, and it's like, well, I've got what else am I do? I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna write a blog post, I'm by myself, go and do some studying, start making some presentations, and then it's like, thinking I'm get spiraling from there. Well, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then it got to the point where my life changed. I was getting married, I was buying a house, and then all that time just basically, it gets on top of you, and you do have to sometimes like step away. And I've seen quite a few people that are excellent in what they do, and they've just basically just poured themselves back with the community for a period of time, just to basically do a bit of self-healing, a bit of self-growth, because it is it's quite intense.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially when you obviously add your day job as well, because being an MVP is also like a second job, isn't it, that you don't get paid for. So
it is. And well, I'm sure your listeners are aware, but a lot of people don't know that the MVP title, it comes from volunteer work that you do outside of your paid job. So obviously it is an award based on how much you contribute to the community, and not based on your technical expertise, right? So
really, it should be Microsoft Volunteer Professional or something like that.
It should, yeah. It really should. So I think a lot of people feel like if you have the MVP award, like, you're a super technical expert. We're like, no, we want to do something for our community and help others. And that's what Microsoft basically thanks us for. But yeah, like you said, it's a lot of hard work, many hours, and an investment.
Yeah, definitely.
I think obviously having MVP since 2015 is such a massive achievement. What would you say are some other career highlights for yourself?
Obviously becoming an MVP. It was.
Yeah.
So the first time I got nominated, I panicked, basically. And I actually talked to the people at Microsoft, and I was like, I don't want to be an MVP, because like, they're going to give me the stamp that I know everything, and I don't know anything. And I kind of panicked on that. And that's when they told me that, don't worry, it's based on what you've already done. You don't have to panic. It's no stress. But that was definitely one of my career highlights. I was the first woman in Norway to become an MVP, and the first in the data platform, or back then it was SQL Server category. So for me, that was like, triple checkbox. I did something that was something I'm super proud of. And it also felt good because I knew I had done the work the previous year to actually get that award. It felt like I had worked for it, and now I got the award. So obviously that was a super highlight for me. And then at this point now, seeing so many more women, seeing more in the data platform category, I feel like that's an achievement in itself as well. Being one of the visible ones earlier, and inspiring others, and hearing that from others that they have been inspired by me. I think that has also been like a huge highlight. Obviously, that's over time, it's not a specific thing, but it is something that I am very, very proud of. Yeah, I think those are probably the two biggest things.
Oh yeah, massive achievements.
Yeah.
So well done. You should be really proud.
Thank you.
Be really proud of yourself. So what advice would you give then to the women, either that are thinking about doing data and going into that sort of role, or that have just got into the data community? What sort of advice would you give?
I think try and figure out what motivates you. What is fun to you? Try and find something that you actually enjoy. And something that has worked for me, at least, it might not work for everyone, but find like a specific area that you feel like this is something I want to invest my time and energy into. It could be, something in Power BI. It could be more on the back end side with databases or maybe architecture. But what worked for me, and I know I probably also got a little bit lucky, but I carved out my little niche area. So I found data integration, and I think one of the reasons that kind of gave my career a boost was finding that area where there wasn't a lot of information already out there, and kind of getting into that fairly early, which meant that I obviously got more people reading my blog posts or attending my sessions. But then I've kind of specialized into that and kind of built up my name in that area. And it also goes for within the companies that I've worked in, and not just like the community or MVP side of it, but inside the company as well. If there were questions about this specific topic, people would come to me and ask for my advice there. And you don't need to know everything. Find, that one thing, start with that, get good at that, get comfortable, working on that thing. And you can learn a little bit more about these other things more on a high level. But find the people who know more about those areas. And if you get any questions that you can't answer, you can go, oh, I don't know that, and get comfortable saying, I don't know this thing, but I know who you can talk to get more information. I think that is maybe the key thing. Find that one thing that gets you excited to go to work. Get really good at that so you feel comfortable. And then you can ask, you can refer people to your other coworkers or friends or other people in your network for those other things. And then just gradually kind of expand from there. When you feel like you've mastered one thing, move on to the next. But don't ever think that you need to know everything, because none of us can. Not even, the super gurus in Microsoft. They don't know everything. They have their own little bits and pieces that they're focusing on.
So we actually spoke about it before on the podcast. It's like how you deal with questions that you don't know the answer to. It's obviously having that good remit around you that can go, well, I know that, I don't know the answer to that particular question, but maybe if you give me your email address or something I can contact you on, I'll go and get that information for you and then connect it up. And that's obviously a very key thing, because I've stood there and presented as well in front of like hundreds of people, and it's like, yes, I am very good at what I'm doing in my slide deck, but then there might be something that someone might throw a question there. Well, actually, I don't actually know the answer to that. So, come speak to me after the session and we'll have a conversation.
Yep.
Or someone's experience as well. And I've done it before where I've delivered a session where it was a real life experience that I had. And I was like, no, absolutely. It's one of the things in my IT career that I'll always remember. And it was drove up the wall for so long. But having that experience and that person coming over, well, I had something similar to that, and then this is what I did, and it's good to then have that conversation. You can bounce off each other and then realise maybe there's something that I could have done differently or they could have done differently. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing I love about going and speaking at events, because you have that time, and so basically you have conversations with people that you wouldn't normally have, because people are attending from all different strips of the globe, and it's come to different sessions. But yeah, it's really important to make sure when you're presenting that you're able to answer people's questions effectively, and if you can't, know how to answer them.
Yeah, for sure. And in the workspace as well, same thing applies there.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of advice is for everyone else is, if you have young people straight out of school coming into your company, be kind of advocates for them, be their sponsors, help them feel safe enough to go, I don't know this, let me talk to, Catherine or Andrew or Sophie or whoever else in that company, and allow them to safely say, I don't know this yet, let me look it up or let me talk to someone else. I think that might be like one of the best pieces of advice to everyone. Take care of the young people coming into this industry, or even people coming in from other areas late in their careers. Do the same thing. Be that safe place for them, to allow them to focus on their specialty, their little area, and then you can be part of basically giving your entire network to those people as well. I think that is a game changer for everyone if we think like that.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice.
Yeah, obviously we touched on the community stuff and the young people coming through within the Norway region. What is available there for the support and helping people realise this is what they can achieve? I mean, obviously in different regions we have like different user groups, and there's so many good males and women that are basically out there banging on the drum about this is what I do, come along, be involved. What do you kind of see within your region?
I think it's fairly similar here to other countries. We have a ton of different user groups that you can go to, and I think the important thing there is just go to one and talk to people. I know the threshold is kind of high. It's a little awkward especially if you're going alone, but there are user groups specializing in all different areas outside of data, outside of Microsoft as well. And I think that is like a great place for the community. We also have, our local different events specializing in different areas. And I know that at least in Norway, we also have Discord communities where you can, hop in and ask questions, whether it's, development or design. But you do kind of need to, people aren't going to come and knock on your door and say, join these communities. You do have to be a little bit active and seek them out. But I think, as soon as you get into one of these communities, it gets easier to kind of navigate as well. But yeah, I think it's very similar to other countries, at least in the data space. We also have like the global Azure data community, which is also helping to connect people from around the world. So it's not just like the local user group. You also can attend, sessions virtually from other user groups. And it's like this global community that you can also have access to. But obviously, going to the local events is super important to network and to get people and to find those with experiences in the same kind of industry as you. I think a lot of companies in Norway as well probably have like different programs and different kind of, I would say almost like user groups within their organizations. But yeah, you just kind of have to take that step and see, how can I get involved? How can I do something that will help me?
I think, like you've said as well, when you do take that step, everyone's so welcoming. And you will find your people and find, your belonging, so to speak. Just like you said, it is just like taking that step, isn't it?
Yeah.
And reaching out, or having mentors that can say you should reach out to this person and so on.
Yeah. And I think that's why, at least in our community, we say that we're aggressively friendly sometimes. Like, we want to get people into our communities. Like, if you like show the slightest little piece of interest, like maybe I should do this, you'll have 10 people grabbing you, dragging you along to something. And I think that comes from, us having such positive experiences, and seeing the difference it can make in your personal life, in your career. And we just kind of want others to experience that as well. So, but yeah, you do kind of need to take that step. But I also want to emphasize that it's okay if you don't. You don't have to get involved. You don't have to spend all your free time on this. I know a lot of people can't do that. They have family, they have children, they have other hobbies and obligations, and that's also okay too. But maybe if you're in that situation, is it possible for you to set aside like maybe one lunch a week, like 30 minutes to an hour every week, where you can watch a video or read some blog posts or do something to kind of grow, whether it's personally or in your career. You can also do that, and that is also okay. You don't have to be this whirlwind doing all the things. I think that's also important, especially after that pandemic, where I think everyone feels a little bit more overwhelmed and stressed than we did a few years ago. It's okay to also just go to work and do your job and be happy with that. And then just do what feels comfortable to you and not feel like you have to be pressured into something.
Cool. So we've got to come close to our running time. So I've got a couple of questions to throw out there. So are you going to MVP Summit, which obviously starts in the next couple of days?
I am not traveling there. No, I was fortunate enough to go to Wales back in March for a conference there. So I will be attending virtually this year.
Fair enough. So it is obviously a big thing to obviously go over to Redmond and obviously experience that life, because it is completely different to anywhere you'll probably ever go.
Yeah. But I've also been lucky enough to be there in the past. I went there from 2015 to whenever it stopped with the pandemic. So I am super fortunate that I have experienced that, and this time let the others experience it and have a fantastic time in Redmond.
Cool. So John always likes to throw two questions out at the end. So I'm going to do them this time around. So what would you say your biggest career highlight is to date?
I think I kind of already answered that, and I got stuck on that answer now. It was becoming an MVP and continuing being an MVP. I would say, like, it made such a huge difference in my life. But on the side of that, I would also point out like how it changed me personally from being that shy, socially awkward person who I was scared to talk to people, to actually, through that process, feeling comfortable getting on stage in front of hundreds of people and talking about technical topics. Like that transition, I think is more important to me and something I'm more proud of than getting the award itself. So yeah, basically just turning my life around. Super proud of that.
And the last one is obviously what the negatives you've experienced in your career. Does any like lows that's made you really think about, is this right for me, or is it, this shouldn't be happening? Because the thing in everyone's career that we all experience some sort of negativity that kind of impacts us, whether it's from a mental perspective or physical one. But yeah, is there anything that's really took you back?
Yes, and this is something I've recently delivered a session on as well. Burnout and depression. I've experienced both multiple times. So burnout in particular, depression is a slightly different topic, so I'll put that aside now. But burnout, even when you're enjoying work, even when you're having fun, overextending over a long period of time and actually hitting that wall and going on sick leave for an extended period of time, that is definitely a low. And it is, and it's especially low for someone who is kind of a high achiever. I think we're more at risk for actually hitting that wall as well. But then getting to that point where you can do absolutely nothing, like you can barely get up and do, make a meal that day. That might be the only thing that you can do because you are so burnt out. Which is also why I'm telling people that it's okay to not do all the things all the time. So that was. It was more of a personal thing than like a work thing. But still, yeah. Experiencing burnout is not something I want for anyone. So make sure that you take care of yourself and don't overextend.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. So just one last question from me. What does the future look like for Cathrine?
I have no idea.
Which is fine.
And that also comes from, I have kind of been back and forth from, design and programming to data to, web on the side. I love all of these things. And I don't really know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Things are happening so quickly that I can barely keep up myself. But all I know is like right now I'm in a really good place. So right here and right now I'm going to enjoy this and not worry too much about, what's going to happen in 1 year or 5 years. And just kind of try and learn about cool things that are coming up. Maybe at some point, AI takes over and all I do is write prompts to it. Who knows? Or maybe I need
nice
to.
Especially when it comes to writing design documentation.
That would be lovely. Yes, I've always said like if I could just wave a wand and say do this thing for me and it would magically happen, that would be amazing. But I don't really know. So focus on and enjoying life and work at the moment, helping others and see what goes from there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So that's okay. Thank you for joining us. To say, we're trying to get these episodes out and share people's stories as much as possible because they are important. And obviously today you've shared your love for community and what it means to you to actually be involved, and obviously the negative spin of it as well. So yeah, thank you very much for that today.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Right, thank you very much, Soph.
No worries.
And I'll speak to you again at some point, Sophie, on the next episode. But over the next one, because I know that because it's been recorded today. But yes, thank you, Cathrine, and everyone else. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about Big Titan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let MigrationWiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed, and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose MigrationWiz.